Here we go now. All right, welcome back to another episode of The Untamed Life. It's Christine Jewell, and today I have a guest on the show, and I'm so excited that Tanja Shaw is here with us. Welcome, Tanja.
Hey, thank you.
Tanja and I we kind of go way back a little bit, not like
It's been a
way
while.
back. It's been a while. And I'm going to you introduce yourself in a sec. But for the listeners here, we met years ago in one of my first masterminds, really. And at the time, we both had holistic health and performance studios, bricks and mortar facilities. Tanja still owns one to this day. And we've just been on a long journey of business and friendships and health and relationship ups and downs and just all of the things. So it's been really cool to witness each other's journey, and I appreciate the fact that also we can just kind of pick up always where we leave off, and be able to have always quality conversations about all the things. So I want to introduce her real quick. Tanja is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which we're going to explain what that is in a few minutes, kinesiologist and high performance coach. So I love how she uses brain science and nutrition and a lot of other awesome modalities to help people regain their energy, overcome emotional eating, and really just to feel amazing in their bodies. And while I know Tanja works, with a lot of women, you also have men that are in your facility and under your coaching umbrella and in your athletic world and all of that. So we are speaking to all of you today as well, especially as we talk about self-sabotaging patterns, getting on and off the roller coaster. Like, how do we actually move through life with navigating the different seasons of life instead of getting stuck in one modality and forcing ourselves through. So I think we're going to have a great conversation. But Tanja, I want to pass it over to you. Why don't you give us a little bit of a background on you? What brought you to this place? What are you excited about in this season of life? Yes, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I want to know, what are you excited about right now, personally, and what you're creating?
Well, right now, it's kind of off topic. I got a hammock. And
I am excited about hammocks. Me too.
I set it up when I was camping this weekend, and I was not actually that excited to get the hammock because I thought it's like one more thing to take care of, and I got to figure out where to put it. I love it. I love my hammock. So that's been really. But I think as entrepreneurs and just creators in general, whether you are an entrepreneur or whatever, we are always growing and pursuing and learning new things. And I know you're like that too. There's really never a dull moment. There's always something that we're sort of working on or learning about, or it's never dull. It's either growth or relaxation, and things are always changing and evolving. And a big part of me, one of my big focuses right now is the FDN side of things. And I'll explain more about what that is. But it's when I started my journey with health and wellness back in 2004 was when I graduated university. I loved fitness all through high school and how it made me feel, and loved the science side of things and chemistry and all that kind of good stuff. So I did a degree in kinesiology, and then I started working as a kin at a physiotherapy clinic. I started personal training. I started working with young athletes, golfers actually. And I really started to really love the personal training side of things. I loved how people could transform their lives through fitness and through health. And along that way, I also started my first diet when I was 21. And, most people start their first diet, they lose the weight. I lost 7 or 8 or 9 pounds or whatever in a very short amount of time and felt amazing. Most people rebound and gain all the way back. And I just went right the opposite. I became very obsessive about food and very hyper vigilant and, the double workouts and the multiple weigh-ins a day and all that kind of good stuff. And so I developed my personal training practice. I realized, because you work so closely with people, that it wasn't just about the what to do. Like, we're so good at saying, oh, here's a meal plan, here's the protocol, here's the 5-step plan to do this. But there are other things that get in the way. And there was a big gap between the knowledge of what to do and the fact that we're actually we're not doing it. And I was also struggling with myself at the same time, my own self-worth and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fill the gap. So in 2015, I really dove into the mindset piece when it comes to our behavior changes and sticking with things. And I did that for a while. And in 2020, when COVID happened, and the studio shut down for a few weeks or a few months, I took the time there to really develop my online practice. And that took me quite a ways, but then I also realized that there were so many people who were still not getting results because the protocol wasn't the right one for them. And that's when I really wanted to dive into the FDN side of things, where I actually draw back the curtains and look under the covers and see what's actually going on through we look at hormones, immune function, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system, oxidative stress, to see what's actually getting in the way with you reaching your goals. And sometimes it is a brain science side of things, or a spiritual thing that we got to overcome. And sometimes it's like, actually I have a gut infection, or sometimes I have this hormone imbalance that actually needs a bit of support. So there's lots of things that we want to look at there. And so I really do enjoy combining all of it to get to the root cause of why people are struggling and how we can overcome that.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a good definition, and thank you for that. And I wrote that down, that question of, we get to be asking ourselves, like, is this the right protocol for me? I remember for years having, best friends come into this studio, or a husband and a wife, and they would want to do the same diet and like have the same meal plan and whatever. And one person would be getting results and the other person would be so struggling, right? And beating themselves up, looking at their best friend or their husband and going like, well, it's working for him and this isn't working for me. And now we're having this whole story about how we're a failure. And this crazy cycle starts and stops. And it's just all so unnecessary if we can just pull the veil back and realize, like, was it Hippocrates that said, right? One person's food is another person's medicine. And I think that's what we get to really, and I've had a huge couple of years of really diving into that, because, I'm 47 now. I'm going to be 47 next month. I'm 46. I'm like, dude, okay, my body is not the same even as when I was 40 or 42, and so it's a very seasonal kind of day by day relationship and experience of going, what do I need now? And I think that's so important for all of us to recognize, whether it's nutrition or anything, really, even in our relationships and our habits and the things we want. So I love that the FDN gives us an ability to actually look at the science of what's actually going on inside before we start just buying a bunch of supplements or doing whatever that,
And just guessing, right? Like, if someone's like, just like spray and pray, like take everything and hope that something works, but never really knowing. So it's a bit more of a, I think of myself as an FDN, as a health detective. It's really looking at what's going on. And I love it. I think it's fascinating. The more you learn, the more you realize that there's still more to learn. Totally. But the body is just so amazing. And what you said there, Christine, is really powerful too, that what you, like, your protocol that you're going to do now is going to be different from last year or next year. Yeah. And it really is important that we take advice from experts and we learn what are the best things. But there's so much, especially in this like midlife age now, there's a lot of people out there who are coaching for midlife who are telling you all these things, like, you must strength train and do 8 to 10 rep max, and you must do sprint training, and you must eat like so many grams of protein, and you must fast or not fast or whatever. And it's just like, says who still? Like, says who? And there's it's wonderful for some people, but I know at my studio, like, I always got caught up for a while of thinking that I always need to lift really heavy and this like 8 to 10 rep max kind of thing, or 10 rep max. And I'm like, most like people at my studio, we can't do that. Like, there's too many injuries and imbalances, and it's not going to be helpful for their bodies. Yeah.
I love it. I just saw this. I was scrolling on social or something. I don't even know how it showed up, but it was a picture of like, I think she was probably 18 years old, an 18-year-old girl doing wall Pilates, which I'm all for this. And she had this like totally ripped six pack. And it's like, for women in their mid, 40s who want to lose body fat. And I'm like, okay, first of all, this girl could be my daughter. She's never had children. She's never gone through those hormonal cycles. If that was me at 18, maybe that plan might work for me, but it's just, so we have to really just take a step back. So it's just, but here, I want to talk about protocols for a second, because here's what I hear all the time. I hear this all the time, even when I'm coaching people, because, high performers and whatever, we want to have whatever, I got to get back in my morning routine. I got to get back in this. I got to get back in shape. I got to get back in the gym. I got to get back to that, whatever the thing that worked. And we're beating ourselves up. Like there's so much self beatings that's happening. And I know we've talked about it, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I kind of want to make sure, like, if you remember nothing from today, is that, look, like I want to talk about discipline and structure and consistencies because, Tanya is probably one of the most consistent and structured people, honestly, I've ever met. And I know to this day you still are, and you still have very similar protocols. But what I also love about you is you are also very fluid. You play, you hike, you camp, you go for the walks, you can adapt, and I know that comes from like probably having that super rigid place, but can we talk a little bit further about, how do we begin to really move out of that place where we're just like so attached and obsessed with these protocols that used to work for us, and we're just trying so hard, and we can't stick to them anymore. First of all, you try for 5 days and then you fall off the rails again. Or, I see all these guys, and God bless them wanting to do this. And I will give Mark a high five. Mark just finished 75 hard. So that was good. But I remember, it was like, at first I was like, oh my gosh, do I need to do that too? 2 workouts a day and this and that. And I was like, no, that is not the right thing for me right now. And I'm not knocking that. But how do we begin to move away from that place of just beating ourselves up and being in the pressure into like, okay, how do we move forward to still have consistency and structure, but in a way that actually can also be fluid and opens us up for the results that we want? I don't know if that's too big of a question, but
Well,
I think it's very direct.
For the next 2.5 hours, we'll break it down.
I know. But
okay, I wrote a couple notes here. I want to just rehash back here. One thing you said at the very beginning is how do we get back? How do we get back to this? And we often think like I need to get back into my body. I need to get back into where I was. And I keep reminding my clients, none of us are moving backwards. We are all moving forwards. And so let's just turn that ship around, look forwards, because this is the direction we're heading. And there's this idea we always need to get back. And it's wonderful to know, to learn from your past and know where you have been or what might have been. You can learn the things that you liked in the past or might have been working for you. The other thing is that I got to, there's all these shoulds, I shoulds. And that's a bit of a, that can be helpful sometimes for sure. It's not this all or nothing approach where we have to do everything we always want to all the time. But we got to just question that sometimes is when we have all these shoulds and why.
Yeah.
You actually said something on our last conversation when you were on my podcast too. It was like, well, what do you want? Like, what's the goal? Because quite often we attach ourselves to the protocol, but we forget why we're doing it. And so, because I want more energy, because I want to, take care of my overall health, because I want to, what is the goal? How do you want to feel? What's the outcome? And then from that, we have to keep the goal, if that's the leading light, but stay flexible with the path. Because what I've learned and what's really helped me to move away from the hardcore, like always pushing all the time and always, doing these things. And especially like I work with a lot of women in midlife through the menopausal transition. Yeah. This is where we see it. It's like, this is where all the shit hits the fan. It's like all the years of pushing, and now we can't really sustain it, or we don't have the hormonal imbalances. But you actually see on the labs the outcome of all of this pushing, and it's not what you want to see. It's unbalanced hormones, it's gut dysfunction, it's all of these other things. And there's so much of a need for us to rest and to create that space. And yes, we can absolutely strength train. Yes, we can go for do the runs and the hikes and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But we have to look at the overall goal, which for most of us is, at some point, it's to feel good. This is what we want.
Yeah.
And we've just yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I have to pause because you just said so much. I was like, write that down. That's a quotable. We got to keep the goal, but be flexible with the path. And that is so key, y'all. Write that down. Stop, pause, like really think about in my world, I guess I always talk about the North Star. Like keep that North Star, but there's so many ways to get there, right? Like there's so many ways. And what you just said about the outcome of all this pushing, it's like we don't see it until we're like in it and it's fully manifested sometimes. And that need to rest. Like I remember, and it was about the start of COVID, right? When we were forced to shut down. So it's like, okay, we couldn't go in, and I closed the studio. I'm telling you, I slept for hours every day. And I bet you it was a good 12 to 18 months, Tanya, of like needing to sleep from 9 till 9, 9 at night till 9 in the morning. I couldn't lift any more weights. My body I was in pain the minute I did it. And it's crazy because we think, oh, I'm going to rest for a week and then I'll be good. I'm going to vacation next week. I'll go to Punta Cana. I'll do whatever. And then I'm going to come back and hit the weights. And I think what you're talking about here, and that's why I wanted to pause for one brief second, is that, and I'm not saying you need to sleep for 18 months, okay? But I think it's an adaptive, like, I said this in your last podcast, I don't know if I did or not, but someone I was talking to, if it was you or a client, was like, I wake up when my body's done sleeping now. Like, I wake up when I'm done resting just changing my lifestyle and my mindset around rest and my belief system around what rest and how essential that is to performance. Like, we always knew that as athletes, but there's still like this old program lingering that's like, yeah, but, yeah, but only for half an hour. Yeah, but, and we're resting, but we're not really resting. So I wanted to just pin that because I think that's so important, like how essential that rest is and some of the outcomes of that pushing. And I'd love for you to just even expand on that a little bit, the outcomes, because you said gut dysfunction and hormones, but like, what is it actually physically like? What are some of the disease? And I don't want to go into like that rabbit hole too deep, but I think there's a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on with my gut right now, or what's, this bloating, or what's this thing. And just, we're sticking Band-Aids on things. And so for today, it's more awareness, that what are some of those manifestations that that all of a sudden we're like, where did this come from? And can we talk about that rest piece for a minute? And then we can carry on with what we were just talking about.
For sure. And just before I dive into that too, the whole belief system, Christina, that you said is really powerful. And we often have this idea, or we have this fear that if I let myself rest, I'll just completely get complacent. I will turn into a mushy blob. I will never get myself up again. And it's not like that. And it really does take a lot of trust. Like, I'm actually, for myself, like you're right, I've always been very structured and very, and almost, and that's served me, but it's also been a hindrance in some ways as well, because you try to uphold the standard all the time. And slowly over the years, my standards have kind of declined a lot.
What is your standard now?
It's a lot different. Well, it's even after this past weekend, I was away for a few days, out fishing with my family, and no cell phone, no nothing up there. So it's so lovely. And I spent a lot of time in nature thinking, like, I want to feel like this sense, like when I'm away like that, I feel so calm and so happy.
Yes.
And I was like, well, why can't I create that feeling throughout my life all the time, not just when I'm away on vacation? And I get there's like not 100% of the time there's gonna be ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. But what are the things that that take me away from that feeling? And I've been starting to, actually did a big journal entry on that this weekend. I'm like, what are the detractors? What are the attractors of those feelings? And a big part is like the shoulds. And I love slow mornings. And yet I have this idea, like I'm more, like my workouts if they're gonna happen, they usually happen in the mornings. Well, 6 now, but yes.
Okay, woo, she's progressed, y'all. It used to be 5.
It used to be 5, but then I'm like, well, do I even like working out? Like, that's the question. Or do I do it because I think I should? And I'm like, well, maybe let's just give myself a break and just what things do I love doing? I love walking. I love hiking. I even love running in small doses, like 5-6 kilometers. I love stretching. I do like strength training in small doses, but it's anyways, good. Back to your initial.
I'm so glad you brought that up, and I know we're bouncing all over, but I'm so glad you brought that up. I feel like you and I were having a mutual journal entry moment this weekend, because I went for a trail run this morning too after I journaled about this exact topic, and I was on the trail and I was like, F this, I'm gonna just do one thing a day that feels really good to my body. Like if I kind of trail run for a bit, and then I was listening to some worship music and walking and just like being in the sun. And then I was running a bit more, and then but it was flow. Like I was just enjoying it. And then on the way back, I looked at the clock and I caught the old program, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's 12 o'clock. What have you done with your day? And that, the old program was coming up. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. Hold on. I had a great morning with God. I journaled. I did some studying. I launched a bunch of arrows. I connected with about 10 or 12 people. I went on, did my workout. I went grocery shopping because it's my husband's birthday today. And I'm coming home to record a podcast and have some meetings. And here I was. I caught the old program, right? It's like, you should have been up and had so much more done. And it's just knowing that, look, that program is still running in the collective and then there. But it's noticing it more and more and really choosing, like, what if this gets to be the way I feel? I love what you said about being in nature too, because I realized, man, every time I travel and I go away somewhere, I'm like, I'm so much more creative. I know this, right? Like, I know this. I'm so much more creative. I'm so much more magnetic. I almost always get a new client coming in. And it's like, what am I doing? I'm playing. I'm light. I'm childlike. I'm relaxed. So I'm open. And I'm still creating so much. I'm highly productive. But it seems so countercultural, because it is. Because it's like, well, you should be home working, So I think that it's important that we deviated into this conversation, because this is it, folks. Like, where do you feel amazing and most natural? And like, what if we start giving ourselves permission for more of that? I don't know. That's what I think,
Yeah, you're going to hear a cat purring here for a second. The whole idea of being productive, and we both have learned and done courses with Brendan Burchard, but he often says that it's life's work, not busy work. And being productive is also about creating feelings, right? It's like, well, I'm producing the feeling of feeling good. And so here, Kat, I was away for the weekend, so she's like ultra cuddly now. But we get to prioritize that. Like, I always often think it's like, well, this is where questions are really powerful, and our own awareness. Okay.
It's okay. We like cats around here. We're cat friendly.
You're going to hear her purr. She's such a loud purr, and she's being relentless, and she wants to sit in my lap right now, so I'll just let her go. She brings me joy. She was on my list of common happy creators. But we have this idea, like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. It's like, so what? So why? Eventually it's like, so I can be happy. Like, well, shit, why don't I just be happy now? Why do we have to keep... And this realization, by the way, has come up for me so many times, and I keep going back to these old patterns, and I keep needing to redirect, because there is no place where these patterns will completely disappear and never... I do want to quickly, though, I just want to tie back the loop of like what happens with our hormones. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so cortisol dysregulation. And what we see typically is our bodies are supposed to be in the state of, we call it like balance and resiliency. And we're supposed to have this sort of equilibrium where from time to time we go into these high stress situations, and that's a good thing, right? Like we're heightened. Cortisol elevates, it gets us ready to meet the external world. If you're going for doing some running, your cortisol is going to be elevated. If you're excited about recording this podcast, your cortisol is going to be up a little bit. It's a great thing. But then we're supposed to go back to this area of rest and recovery, and that's what's supposed to happen. But what tends to happen is in our lives, we are going in this higher, like this heightened state of cortisol activation, and cortisol is being produced at a higher rate. And we call this the acute phase. And for a lot of people, here's the thing. We feel great here. We often have no symptoms. Well, we're running on adrenaline, right? So we were like, we can get shit done. We're up, we're early, we're drinking the coffee. But what happens underneath, we start to have some, and sometimes we might still see some symptoms here as well. But for a lot of people, they actually do feel quite good. But what happens underneath is we have increased blood sugar, increased insulin, we have increased appetite, increased cravings, we have increased inflammation in the body. We have lowered thyroid stimulating hormones, the conversion of T4 to T3, and T3 is our active thyroid hormone, that's going to be blocked. We have decreased melatonin, which means that we're going to have increased sleep disturbances. We have suppressed bone formation. We start to have lower mood, less willpower, less memory, loss of muscle mass, immune system imbalances. We can start to have decrease of the sex hormones. We also have decreased secretion of something called secretory IgA, which is an immune globulin, that's released from our intestine. That increases the risk for GI infection, things like that too. So we already see that these things are going to happen when we're in this acute phase. But then over time, what happens is that we go into this, we call it the compensatory range. So the compensatory range, we start to have, it kind of drops down a little bit. Maybe you have cortisol dysregulation. You might have high cortisol when it's supposed to be low. You might have low cortisol when it's supposed to be high. And we often see issues with circadian rhythm disruption. Maybe you are kind of wired and tired at nighttime, or you have a slow starter in the morning. We often see more issues with sex hormones as well. We often see low testosterone in men, higher estrogen. For a lot of women, we see high estrogen, low progesterone. We also see cortisol dominance, and we have more cortisol than another hormone called DHEA, which is supposed to counter-regulate cortisol. Cortisol is like more of a catabolic hormone. It actually breaks things down, whereas DHEA is more of an anabolic hormone, and it's supposed to build things up. We want balance. We never want, it's not like one thing is bad or one thing is good. We want that balance. And then over time, we get to an exhaustive phase, and this is where a lot of people end up. And we're just feeling depleted. Sometimes it's low blood sugar. Sometimes it's like really a lot more issues with thyroid dysfunction, sugar cravings. You need to eat often. Sometimes we have low blood pressure. We have lots of allergies, chemical sensitivities. We're feeling depressed. All of these things can happen over time. And then what happens is we rest a little bit. We give ourselves some adaptogens. We kind of do some great things, and then we feel good again, and then we go back to like doing all the things. Back to the old
pattern. And so this is important. The merry-go-round, right?
I know.
It's so crazy. And when you were talking about the wired and tired, it reminded me of a conversation I was having with a client I was working with. And when we first started working together, she was just like working till like 11 at night, I think, and starting at 5 a.m. on her computer, working till 11 at night. And she was just so exhausted, but she had a lot of energy. She was wired at night. And after we started working together for a few months, even recently, we were talking about her energy. And I was like, how you doing? And she's like, well, I'm waking up a lot more rested and I feel really good. She's like, but this weird thing is happening. I can't work at night like I used to. I'm now getting tired I said, well, what time do you get tired? She's like, like 8 or 9. And I was like, oh, this is a sign that we're getting healthy again. But people, we think there's something wrong. Why can't I work till midnight? Where did that go, right? And it's like, no, these are signs that we're moving in the right direction, right?
Well, I think that's why it's so important, like the work that you do, the work that I do, Christine, is that and even also having community and having other people who are also prioritizing and taking care of themselves. Because if all you ever know is what you think things should look like, or your role model is that person who is now, the 5 a.m. club, well, let's do the 3 a.m. club because the 5 a.m. club is for losers. Right? It just goes, and I'll sleep when I'm dead, or all this.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, somebody else is sleeping right now, or awake right now working,
It's right. So if that's our standard, if that's what we think we should be doing, and then we can't do it, or we struggle trying to maintain that, so it's really important that you have more role models and more examples of people who are valuing play and downtime and understanding what real health actually looks like and what the human body is supposed to be doing.
And I think that what you said there is really important is, I'm a big believer in really choosing our circle of influencers and counsel, whatever the counsel is in your life, whether it's a nutritionist, a personal trainer, a mentor, a coach, like anybody that is going to have influence over you and your decisions. It's like, I've always say, like, would I want to trade a day of my life for a day of their life? Not that I really want to trade life, but like, is this person living the life in alignment with what I value, right? Or do I just like their stuff or their, whatever? The thing is and the reality is that we get to be a lot more aware of who those people are, because really a lot of the things we're chasing, like we said earlier, are those feelings of I just want to be able to relax and go camping with my kids for a few days and not have my phone and not be freaking out that the world is going to collapse or whatever, and that's really at the end of the day what we're after. But I want to circle back, because when I know we're both very holistic in nature when we work with people, and I'm not doing so much of the health stuff, and you went deeper into that diagnostic work, which I think is so cool. And actually, now that you're talking, I'm like, we got to collaborate on something and bring the best of those two worlds in even more. I think that would be cool. But, sometimes we're just, I want to say, like, we don't have to do it all alone in terms of all of this weight on our shoulders of trying to figure out what's going on, and then trying to figure out how to fix it, and then trying all these random things that don't work. And sometimes it is mindset. Sometimes we get to just shift our mindset and our psychology and our belief structures. And I think we always get to work at all those levels. We get to look at the mindset piece, like what gets to shift in the mental game, the mental arena, right? Some of those faulty belief structures and the shoulding, and we can play with the redirecting of thoughts and that stuff, which there's so much cool stuff around neuroscience. We can look at the emotional side of this, like what emotion am I trying to shove or, satiate? And we talk a lot about that on this show. But sometimes the physical side, we also have to address that the physical side. Like, look, is it something going on with your bowels or your gut? I really am a big fan that intuitively our body does know what it wants, but we're so programmed to like overriding that. But, just getting these tests or getting, looking at what are the physical roots here as well that we can begin to shift. And if we can start to address it multidimensionally like that, I think it's so important. So we talked about the physical side, which is don't run back to the old thing and don't do crash diets and 30-day fixes. I mean, a kickstart there and back is good, but even last week I heard a couple more people say, I got to drop 10 pounds in X days, so I'm back on the keto thing. And then I got a closet with 3 different wardrobes in it. And I was like, wow, this is the way that we live, 3 different wardrobes for 3 different body shapes, because we know how to get weight on and get weight off. And it's like, are we sticking Band-Aids on things? Or are we actually like doing the surgery so that we can have the lasting effect? We talked about the physical stuff a little bit, unless there's something else you want to add, because I think the modification is once we have awareness of the physicality, we can start to go, okay, what's the supplementation, or what's the modified workouts, or what's the nutrition protocol that's right for you? Not that you have to put your whole family on, but that's another thing too, is like one person's doing it, so the whole family has to do it. And it's like, why,
Yeah. Well, you said something like you're breaking down all this, like the thoughts and the beliefs and the emotional sides and the physical sides, and I do think they all have to be looked at, because sometimes we call it self-sabotage. We're like, well, why can't I stick with it? Well, sometimes we can't stick with it because the protocol that we're doing is not in alignment with what our body needs, or we're just feeling depleted because we're not fueling our body the way our body is meant to be fueled, or we're eating foods that are actually creating more inflammation in our body, or we're not getting results because I'm not doing the right thing for myself. And so it's really just good to look at all of those things, because sometimes too, like, I don't know about you, but I'm going to guess, like when we feel good, we're also going to be making better choices.
Totally.
Like, when you're calm, when you are, committed, focused on your goals, when you have that bandwidth. And if you're not doing the right things physically for your body, then it's really hard to even feel good. And then you just feel like there's all this confusion, like, well, what should I eat? Is dairy good for me? Is gluten good for me? Or is it bad for me? Or can I eat eggs or coffee? Or now we got to fast, and now, well, maybe the carnivore diet, and, spinach has oxalates, so we should avoid that. And it's just like, it's kind of.
That was a whole other fad, the carnivore. But, that's true. Like I would say fear is a terrible counselor, so never make decisions when you're afraid. But so, like, fatigue is a terrible counselor too, right? And so if we're trying to make decisions when we're exhausted and we're just grasping at something, but, get some rest, get some space, and then get some good, other insight that can help support you. And sometimes we just need that person in our corner that can also, I think, call us back to like being more in touch with our body. What's our body also craving and needing and wanting? Because some of us have never asked ourselves these questions, right? And so I think that's really powerful too. I want to also pivot for a minute, because I talk a lot about the mental, the physical, the emotional, but I really believe that there's a spiritual element too. And I'm so curious, because I know recently you've had a bit of a spiritual, I don't want to call it awakening, but really deepening in your relationship with God and everything. And I'm curious how, if at all, that has even shifted the way you look at the body or the way that you look at health, just having more of a faith-based relationship, or, looking at it things that way. Because I know that wasn't so much part of your life before, and now it is. And I'm so curious, how has that impacted the way you look at the human body or deal with it or anything like that? Anything you want to add around that? Because I think this is such
Yeah,
an important piece of the conversation.
I agree. And you cut out for a second there, so I think I caught most of it. So if I didn't catch the whole
Okay.
question, hopefully I was there too. Just recently, actually. So yes, last October I started going to church, and it was God's always been a part of my life in there a little bit, but
Yeah.
I've never considered myself to be religious or Christian or and I've always been wanted to be more spiritual. I knew there's something missing in my life, and
Yeah.
just recently, actually, at Southside Church, they did a 5-week series on spiritual warfare. And that was really
Yes.
interesting, and it was all
Yes.
about this idea, like, if things should be easy but they're not, it's often very spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this idea of, like, we have all of the how-tos, and you can have the 5-step plan or the 3-step process, but often the want to is not there. And so a lot of it is just like, what are the things that are getting in our way here
Yeah.
that are required to make the change?
Yeah.
And I think depending on my clients' journey as well, where they're at in terms of their relationship with God or their belief systems, but I think it's really important just to, like, I think of also taking care of our body. Like, this is our vessel that we were given to experience life, and that's a pretty amazing gift. And I think of it that way too, as something to continue to work through. And a big part for me too has been asking, which has been really new to me. Is Keith always tells me, he's like, God already knows what you want, just ask for it. And I was like,
True though.
and
But who teaches us these things, Yeah.
well, it is, and just asking for, like, even if it's the feelings that you're after, like asking for, you can have the practices, but also leaning into God to request the things that you want, which is the feelings that you're after.
Yeah. I really want to double tap on that because I think that's so important. I literally was having that conversation with someone else, is that sometimes we're praying and we're praying for a thing, right? Like we're praying for money. Oh, just give me money because I need to get over this thing. But really what we're after is peace, right? Or we're praying for the relationship or whatever the thing is, the object. But really what we want is confidence, right? And that's the thing, is that I think as we get not better, but we mature in this relationship, as with any relationship, right? And we get to really explore this side even more. We can begin to say, like, give me the confidence, and that's the extension of grace. It's supernatural, okay? It's like where your confidence ends, my confidence kicks in, and that's why otherwise we don't need God and we don't need the Spirit, we can do it on our own. And for me, that's been so powerful in the places where I felt like I'm weak right now. So my weakness, I need some strength, can I get some strength, right, to get through this season, this day. And that was a huge thing that I prayed for when I did have to slow down. I just want to say that, because when I slowed down a lot and I recalibrated my entire days, and I was like, I am not starting till noon. Like I start my creative stuff in the morning, but I don't take calls or do coaching calls or trainings or any, podcast interviews or anything till like between 12 and 4. That's my time for these things, because I really wanted to preserve the mornings. And I was really unsettled with that in the beginning, right? It was like, oh my gosh, and sometimes we're praying like, okay, keep the cash flow going, or keep the whatever. But really what you need is the trust. And I had to pray a lot for trust in the process, trust that I would be provided for, trust that actually this was going to be a better system. And then and I want to tack on to that too, is and I think that's so important, that once we ask for it, then we also, part of receiving is saying thank you. Thank you for the trust. Thank you for the confidence. And then, they always say that faith is in action, right? So then we move confidently in the direction, or we move faithfully, because we are also believing that we've been given that. And it's funny what happens the minute we start moving confidently or faithfully or a little bit more peacefully through this or calmly through this. We experience more of that feeling that we were after all along, and it becomes a manifestation. So I think that's so important, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because It is huge. And I'm also glad that you brought up the spiritual warfare thing, because I kind of always say like, just because you're not feeling like working out doesn't mean the devil's after you today. Okay. Like, you probably didn't go to bed early last night. You may, whatever the thing is, like, just because you're having a hard workout doesn't mean you're in a spiritual attack. But sometimes we can go through these seasons where it feels like something has a hold on us, and we just can't, no matter what we do, throw our way. And it's almost like this thing has a hold on us. And I do believe that that's another place to look for if there's something, especially in the terms of addictions or food addictions or other addictions or substance addictions or and again, there's a difference between like mentally feeling low or depressed versus like a depressive spirit over us. Like, we get to we're not going to go deep down that, but then there's things to look at there on the spiritual side too. So I'm glad you brought that up. But really circling back is there's a lot of practical, tactical, just like, first of all, let me see what's going on in the physical, and let's start shifting there and the mindset and the emotions. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that as we start to wrap, but I wanted to address that because I thought it was so good. We kind of went full circle.
I think it goes back to that whole, going back to the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about like, how do you want to feel? Yeah. And because you said something there too, but we often ask for the thing, thinking that thing is going to give us the feeling that we're after. And there's that book, Janelle Laporte, she wrote The Desire Map, and she talks about the building goals based on feelings, because we're always after feeling, and our core desire feeling in some way, shape, or form, like I said, is to feel good. And that goes back to you going for your trail run in the morning. It's like, well, but you want to feel expansive and joyful and good, so that's leading to that feeling. And obviously we all have responsibilities, and we got to kind of take that into consideration as well. But I think it's really important that we start to get clarity on how we want to feel, and then we start questioning the things that are actually going to give us that feeling, because often our brain lies to us too, and the things that we think are going to bring us happiness don't bring us happiness. And we actually feel sometimes like, I feel happy when I'm creative and have space and time, and I'm on purpose, and I'm connecting with my clients. Like that makes me happy. I love my hammock as well, but my hammock will only be happy for so long. Although right now it's going to probably make me happy for a little bit longer because it's new and I love it.
That's a really powerful question, though. When was the last time somebody asked them that? Like, what really makes me happy? Because I think that, there's a part of us that's like, yeah, but I should want something else, or I should want something more. Like, that's not enough, and totally. That's such a good thing.
Or we have no idea at all because we haven't, and this, like I said, I work with lots of, I work mostly with women, but I do work with men too. And in the FDN space, when I work one-on-one, I mean, it's applicable to everyone. And emotional eating and all that, I've worked with enough men and women that I know it happens to everyone, like no matter how you're born or anything. But I just totally lost my show. Yeah, that women, so when the women that I work with are so used to being the mom, and then they have the careers, and they haven't even asked themselves that question. They don't even know what makes them happy anymore. And when they don't know, they often feel like it's kind of sad. But it's I asked them, it's like they were telling them it's like rediscovering yourself. It's like being Christine 2.0 now. We're gonna create something new, or what used to make you happy. But we've been so disconnected because we, for whatever reason, and sometimes it's cultural, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's being it's easier to take care of other people than to look at our own stuff, and all that can be a part of it. But we just haven't for so long to ask ourselves. We haven't asked ourselves those questions. Yeah,
it is a sad question. I can't remember. That's probably the number one question that most people cry when I ask them that, because they haven't ever given themselves that. And sometimes it's the first time ever that they've actually listened to their own heart, or even taken the time to ask that question of their own heart. So anyways,
there's my journal entry right there. All my happiness right there. I'm like.
Okay, real quick before we hop, what was the exercise you did? What were the prompts? I'm a big fan of journal prompts. I know you are too.
I just put it on 2 pages of my journal. I put calm and happy creators and calm and happy detractors. So whatever feeling you're after, I'm like, what are the things that actually make me feel calm? And now those are the feelings that I'm after, because I from the outside, for myself personally, like everyone can say like, oh, you got your stuff together, you're doing this and this.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of, my brain just does not shut off, and I overthink a lot. I definitely know I can be that kind of like calm on the outside, but worried on the inside kind of like that can happen. So what makes me calm and happy? And then what are the things that get in the way? And the interesting thing with this exercise actually was the detractors were mostly not having enough time or space.
Yeah, same.
And faulty thinking. Like it was so much, it wasn't actually what I do. It's not having or trying to fit too many things into the time that I have, or thoughts and perspectives that are not true. That was it.
Yeah.
Like it was really powerful.
Simple.
It's so simple. And I know you journal a lot too. Like all my clients are journal converters, because once they start, it's just so powerful, because if you think about solving a hard math equation or something like that, you don't just do it in your head, you do it on paper. And same thing when these are tough questions. What makes me happy? What makes me like bring me joy in life? Write it down.
I'm so glad you said it that way, because I would say the brain is designed to solve problems. Like we get to get better at giving our brains better problems to solve. Because if you ask a dumb question, you're going to get a dumb answer. So if you keep going, why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Right? Your brain is going to solve that puzzle, and it's going to give you an answer to the puzzle you just gave it. And so can we become students and a little bit more skilled at asking ourselves better questions? And I 100%, I believe in the power of journaling too. And one of my favorite things to do at the beginning of every journal is to write down some of those self-reflection questions and things that I'm asking myself, and really build an arsenal, because it becomes the most powerful toolbox. And you guys, back in the day, Tanya and I used to get up at 5 a.m. when we would go on our business trips and our mastermind trips, and we would get up in the dark and go down in the lobby and have our coffee, and we would journal. Yeah, do you remember that? And then we would get our workout on before the day started. So we are practicing what we're preaching, and yes, we practiced it we practiced it back then at part of the Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod, and then the 5 o'clock club and everything else. And we're still journaling today, but it looks different, right? It's like the foundational elements are still there, and we've cultivated and adjusted and adapted, but we are not fixated to like, oh, I'm not journaling because I'm not doing the 5 a.m. club, or I'm not journaling because I'm not doing Miracle Morning. And I think what you said about the math problem is really important. Like you would get a piece of paper out. Now we have Chat GTP, so maybe people don't use that anymore. But you can't ask Chat GTP these questions about yourself. Maybe one day, and I hope to God that I personally, I will never be using it for that. But I know that that's a whole other topic and a whole other podcast. But that's it. So as we wrap today, how would you're also a high performance coach. So I'm curious, what is Tanya's definition of high performance in today's world? Because I know we have shifted our definition of that.
That's a good question. I haven't thought about that for a while. Ultimately, whether it's high performance or whatever, but I think it's your own self-satisfaction. Mm-hmm. And a big part of it is self-confidence in yourself, and feeling content and feeling how you want to feel in life. I think that's amazing. And having the bandwidth to go do the things you want to do.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's high time we redefine some of these old terms that we've got, like what that means. It's not about pumping out whatever 20 hours a day.
No, but Brendan's definition of high performance was the 3 words, like it was joy, confidence, and something else. Yeah. Like fulfillment or something like fulfillment. Yeah. Oh my gosh, fulfillment. I think it was those words. And those make sense too. I think he was on the right path.
So good. It's so personal, right? We can each have our own definition, and that's really it. All right, Tanya, so how can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your work, what you're up to? Where do they find you?
The best, my website's TanjaShaw.com. My name is spelled with a J, so TanjaShaw. And I also have a podcast, so if you're listening to a podcast, you probably listen to podcasts. It's called The Fit and Vibrant You. It's been now 8 years I've been doing that podcast.
Okay, talk about consistency. Y'all, consistency and discipline. How many episodes? What number are you at? Do you know? I know you.
I'm at I have a couple of bonus episodes in there, but about 343. But like I had a couple of, I think there was like a half a year in there, or a year where I did it only once a month, and then a half a year where I didn't do it at all. But other than that, it's been weekly episodes, because doing once a month just didn't happen.
No.
It's easier to do it once a week than it is to do it once a month, I found.
It is. It is. Well, Tanya, it was so good to have you here and have this conversation. I'm so glad I always get excited when I jump back into the health conversation, because I do love the body. It's such a miraculous thing when we really see how the body's created, and we can really work with our bodies, and we can stop fighting. We can stop fighting these vessels that God gave us to do life in, and like they just really want to support us, and right, and carry us through life, but we got to stop getting in the way. So I definitely encourage people, if you guys want to learn more, to reach out to Tanya. Did you want to say one last thing?
Yeah, well, really quick, because what you said there was so helpful and so will change your relationship with yourself, is to understand that your body is trying the best your body can for you. And because we do get to this point where you have some weight gain, or you're tired, or your hormones are not functioning properly, and you think that your body's fighting you, and like, no, like your body's hardwired for survival. That is it. It's like, it's there to keep you alive. And once we understand that, we can start to not fight so much anymore, and just start to get on the same team, because it's supposed to be that way.
And I'm so glad we ended up there. Stop fighting the one thing that's trying to keep you alive. It's doing its job. So how can you guys learn to work together? And that might be the most powerful thing that you take away from today. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this show, and you know somebody that needs to hear this message today, go ahead and forward them this episode. This is how we spread the message. If you haven't already, please subscribe or follow and leave a review. And as always, if you want to dive deeper into any of this work, you can drop below and check out the links in the show notes for a couple different ways that we can support you. So thank you for being here. Until next time, here's to loving fiercely and leading courageously. Bye for now.